morning, everyone. Welcome to Recipe for Success. My name is Nancy Giacalone, and my guest today is Nakeishia Simic with UCM Digital Health. I'm really excited to have Nakeishia on my show today because she is going to talk to us from the standpoint of a human resources director. And we talk about a lot of different things, but I'm really interested to hear her spin on things and some of the unique challenges that she's faced. So, without further ado, I am going to let Nakeishia go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her background and career history.
Thank you, Nancy, so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So let's see, I'm originally from Ohio. I moved to New York City about 10 years ago, and have had a variety of positions within the AHR field. I've had the opportunity of working at startups, a Bitcoin startup, actually. I'm sure a lot
Oh,
of people
wow.
have heard about that, right? Exactly. Healthcare company, as well as a not for profit. I have my master's degree in HR and employment relations. And yeah, it's kind of been around in all types of industries.
That's awesome. Well, I know that you just joined in January UCM Digital Health. So I'm really interested to know what attracted you to that position and kind of motivated you to make a move.
So this is a very cheesy response, but I promise it's the truth. Keith, our CEO, I had a conversation with him probably, I think it was like in October, and he was just so passionate about the work in which the company was trying to accomplish, or, in terms of servicing patients. And I had to be on board after the first conversation with him. I also had the opportunity to meet with a lot of the leadership team before joining, and everyone was just so nice and dedicated and committed that I knew again that I wanted to be a part of this team. I would say at this stage in my career, I'm also a new mother, that it's really important for me in terms of, fitting into a company culturally, and honestly, just working with nice, smart people.
There is so much to be said for that. I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to apologize, first of all, to you and also to our audience. I don't know what's going on. 2022 seems to be the year of Nancy being sick. So if I have to occasionally mute myself to try to politely cough, I do apologize. Um, I agree so much with you that it matters who you work with. I think
Mhm.
that since we spend such a big part of our lives working, that the people that we surround ourselves with in our work environment are just as important as the people we surround ourselves with in our personal lives. Because
Mhm.
let's face it, it's all integrated, it all overlaps, and you can't go from one environment that doesn't feel great to another one that feels great without there being some bleed over. So I love that's what attracted you to the job. I think that's very, very cool.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of in the unique position of not only being a business owner and having employees and currently hiring. So, boy, that's a lot of fun. Uh,
Right.
um, but I also work with a ton of people in HR because as a benefits consultant, that's obviously sometimes my closest relationship in a company is with the HR department. Um, so I get how challenging it can be to try to build a dynamic culture. So I'd like to know what you do or have done to engage both current employees and then attract new talent that are going to be a good fit for the culture you're trying to build.
Yeah. So definitely. So that's a great question. So in terms of engaging current employees, I think the best way to start out, honestly, is soliciting feedback. When I came on board UCM in January, I conducted tons of surveys, engagement surveys, as well as departmental surveys as well, trying to figure out ping points, so areas in which we were strong and then areas in which we needed to improve. I also conducted stay interviews, which, if anyone's not familiar with that, essentially it's me reaching out and finding out why team members are choosing to work at this particular company. Um, it really is. I mean, it kind of comes down to a balancing act. in terms of it, because on one hand, you're an advocate for the employee, but on the other hand, you're clearly trying to protect the company, right? But when you have a very transparent leadership, it makes my job a lot easier, right? I'm able to find out things in which we can improve upon and bring that to the table and hopefully make some meaningful changes. Again, I don't want to keep bringing up my current role, but I will say that they've made it a lot easier for me in terms of that, just because leadership has been so open to hearing things in which maybe we could be doing a little bit better. In terms of attracting outside talent, it's essentially the same sort of thing, being transparent. So when I'm hiring or when I'm doing the interviews, I'm very open and honest about the culture in which this candidate is potentially coming into. I also really encourage slash probably even push a little bit for that candidate to ask questions that really matter to them, right? A lot of times candidates get on interviews and they're so nervous and they're so concerned in terms of putting like their best foot forward, which clearly is important, but also they need to be in the mindset of they're interviewing their potential company, their potential colleagues, right? And we need to make sure that there is a good fit there for all parties.
I agree with that completely. I know as an employer, sometimes I think in the past, I haven't been clear enough about what was important to me, and not just from a skill set, but values. Because and that's one thing that I know I'm personally doing a little bit different this time, is I'm saying these are the values that this company lives. And if you're not in alignment with that, I'm totally okay with that, but this probably isn't the right place for you.
Right,
And making sure that that is really crystal clear, because we're not all the same. I don't expect people to all agree with me, but I want them to
right.
know what they're getting into prior to, sitting down in the desk for the first time.
No, and that definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, you have to look at it like this. You could have an amazing candidate, right? In terms of skill set, right? In a great company. But if they don't match, then it's going to be the results are going to speak for themselves, meaning that, the employee is not going to be happy and neither is the employer. So
Yeah,
it's
I
very
mean,
important.
I can't tell you how many times I have encountered that situation. I'm like, this is a great person, but this is not the right place for that person.
Exactly.
So that's always a little bit interesting. You were talking about, walking that fine line between employer and employee. In some ways, it's like HR is kind of like Switzerland. It has to be the safe
Right.
place. It has to be the
Right,
safe
for
place for
everyone.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, for everybody to come and say, how do I deal with this, and how do I get through it? So in your past, if you're to look across the longevity of your HR experiences, is there one thing that you see that pops up frequently when you're doing interviews or surveys with employees, as far as like, I really wish I had this, or I really wish this was different? Is there a common theme that you've heard, or is it just different across the board?
So there is a common theme, and I can actually say maybe pre-COVID versus, post
Right.
and living
Sure.
during COVID. So probably pre-COVID, a lot of the conversation was surrounding compensation, I would say. Now, what I'm really starting to hear is flexibility and the ability to work remote, as sometimes even being more important than the compensation piece of that. People
Yeah.
are really understanding that, that they essentially want it all. They want a great career, but they also want the flexibility to be able to be with family or work wherever they choose to.
Yeah. No, I get that. Okay, so just to kind of build on that a little bit. So, how do you attract new people to a position that not only have the skills but also meet the culture that you're trying to build? Because those are kind of two different things. So, you have to address both of them. How do you attract people to that?
I would say honestly, it's with a partnership with HR and the marketing team, right? So it's really figuring out what the company does well, and making sure in which you're marketing or branding the company to attract potential talent into that, right? Again, as you and I were just speaking about, you can have a great candidate, but in the wrong position or wrong company, right? So it really comes down to just being open and honest about what we do well, what we need to improve upon, and where we are trying to go. When I say we, clearly I'm speaking about the company.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay, so and I'm going off script. Sorry about this, but I'm pretty sure
You're
you're.
good.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure you're ready for this question. So, when you're talking about, because the workforce has changed so much in the last 2.5 years. I mean, COVID just flipped everything upside down. There were plenty of companies that had remote employees, et cetera, but primarily they were either salespeople or they were
Mhm.
people that had a strictly support role where they didn't have much interaction with other teammates. But
Mhm.
I'm really curious about the unique challenges of managing employees that are remote, and how do you keep them engaged?
Yeah. So again, I go back to surveys, right? The employees need to let us know how we can better keep them engaged, right? For instance, doing a virtual happy hour, that may not be appealing to everybody, right? So it really comes down to getting that feedback and figuring out what is the best plan of action based on what your employees are asking for and what the company culture is. So
Okay,
it's hard to give
so
just like a, a
no, no,
singular
no, no.
answer in terms of
That
that.
that that's really good. So that speaks to the engagement part. But then how do you also address the management part when you're not seeing people, or you have that distance? Is it more challenging for you? Less challenging? The same? Just a little bit curious about that.
I wouldn't say that it's more challenging, it's just different, right? It's something in which we have to be able to adapt to, right? So in terms of like HR, like some things that come up are in terms of compliance, right? We may now have employees in California versus here in New York, right? So in terms of that piece, yes, it is a little bit more challenging, right? Staff members have to let us know if they're moving, and then we have to look at state laws and all of those sorts of
Yeah.
things. But in terms of managing, I honestly just think it's changed a little bit, right? Instead of meeting in an in-person office or doing an in-person meeting, you're meeting virtually, right? So you're doing Zoom, you're doing Slack, you're doing all of these things to still kind of have the conversations.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. So, okay, we brought up COVID a little bit, the pandemic. It really changed so much around employment, that we've gone through what's called the Great Resignation, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. It's hard to find employees. I mean, I can think of 5 years ago, if I put an ad out for a position, I was flooded with applications.
Right.
That is
Right.
not the case anymore.
Not anymore.
And not anymore. And the expectations around what people are looking for are very different. So I how do you combat that? How do you again, because it's so different. Are you when you're looking for somebody, are you employing employment agencies? What tools, what levers are you pulling to bring people in?
So all of those, right? But what I'll personally speak to is in terms of employee referrals. That actually has become something that I kind of rely heavily on, right? Your employees hopefully are your best advocate, right? If you're doing a good job, then they're going to mention this to their friends, families, and colleagues, right? Hopefully, bring some individuals on board. In addition to that, yes, we HR professionals are using agencies, right? A little bit more to kind of get some of the candidates that are particularly passively searching. So yes, it has gotten a bit difficult, but on I guess kind of like the same ground, I like this challenge, right? Because we've made the playing field a bit even for potential employees, right, coming on board. So now they're able to kind of negotiate,
Right.
items, the flexibility, the being able to work remote, all of those sorts of things, right? So if anything, it's just even the playing field a bit, which yeah, I don't mind.
I,
I don't mind
I
the
like that.
challenge.
And I love the idea of employee referrals too, as far as putting a priority on those. So, do you
Mhm.
have a formal process for employees providing referrals, or is it just kind of a word of mouth thing?
No, so we actually came up with a formalized process this year for our employees to refer their colleagues, friends, families, all of those sorts of things. Yeah, I think the best way actually to handle it is to have an actual program, not just word of mouth. So we released it by actually, I did a video within the company and sent it out to all of the team members, just kind of like a fun way to get people engaged. And that's another way too, right? Not always sending out emails. What we've started to do is send out communications via video channels, right? So us leadership recording short videos and sending it out to the team.
I love that. That's one thing that we do on the benefit side is we understand that everybody receives information in a different way and they process it
Hmm.
differently. So hitting them
Right.
on different levels is so smart. I love that. Doing it internally as well as externally. So that's
Hmm.
very cool. Um, okay, so what are the top 3 things that you see most employees are looking for in a job, whether it's their current position or a new one? What are their top 3 requirements?
Well, I would say besides compensation rate, it's the flexibility, right? So no longer are employees looking for or really expecting the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, right? So they're definitely looking for the ability of, hey, I prefer to work 7 to 10, take a break, and then I do my best work from 2 p.m. on, like onward. Remote, right? Why do I need to come into an office when I'm able to be even more productive at like the beach or, at mom's house or wherever the case may be, right? Um, Third, probably a cohesive team and transparent leadership. I think that's really important now in terms of building longstanding relationships. I think employees are starting to look at that more.
Do you think that anything has been lost with the remote workers in the inability or how can I put this? Not sitting around a table together or not, hearing somebody working on something and saying, "Hey, I had a problem like that. I can help you out with that." Do you think that there's anything that's been lost in that process at all?
I don't think it's been lost. I honestly think that in-person communication has just moved on to text message, to Slack, to Teams, to all of these other forms of communication. And I say that, okay, again, because I joined the team in January and I hadn't had the chance to meet anyone, right? Besides, video calls, phone calls, text messages, yada, yada, yada. I went to the office for the first time in May, and I knew everyone. Like, there wasn't this awkward, like, "Oh," it just
Right.
it flowed so naturally. I was actually surprised that it wasn't like, "Oh, hi." Nope. So, yeah,
Good to
I
know.
don't I don't think anything was lost. Yeah.
So I'll ask you a question on a personal basis. So I have a smaller company and we are extremely collaborative and we have a lot of clients that walk in as well. So we kind of
Mm,
have to have set hours and
right.
and we kind of have to have, I mean, not kind of, we have set hours and we kind of have to have the employees working during those hours because that's when our clients are contacting us. And we get a lot of pushback against that because again, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Well, I want to work from 9 to noon, and then I want to work again from 5 to 8. And I'm like, well, I can appreciate that. Me too. But unfortunately, that doesn't work in our industry and what we're specifically doing. And it's
Mhm.
really kind of hard it's kind of hard to compete with that when we are in a more defined model of what being an
Right,
employee
right,
or
right, like a 9 to 5.
what a team member looks like. Have you been in any positions or any instances where you've had to kind of promote why in person is important in that specific instance?
Yes. So actually, my last employer, yes, so we had quite a few staff members that needed to go into our clinics in order to provide care. Actually, though, I have a suggestion for you. Have you ever considered potentially like like a rotating schedule for
Oh,
your employees or
yeah,
something? Or
yeah.
okay. Okay, sorry, I was just thinking about
No, that's
that as
okay.
I was talking about it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, honestly, just it comes down to being transparent, right? So if the team understands, the real reason as to why, you have to come into the office because we can't service these patients or we can't service these clients, in a virtual in environment. We have people coming in, we have those sorts of things. You will get pushback from certain employees, and maybe they're employees that don't necessarily, um, I hate to say, but aren't necessarily going to be a fit at
Right.
that particular company, right? Maybe it's better for them to go on to find other positions, right? But there are going to be folks that actually prefer to be in person and don't enjoy the virtual lifestyle, right? And want to have those interactions. So it's about making sure you're bringing in that group of people, right? And what I can say in terms of making the transition easier, I've always been very open with anyone that I've worked with. So, in terms of like, I'm open to review resumes. I'm open to help you, practice for interviews, right? So I'm very open, and I tell the team that. So if and when someone makes the decision that it's time for them to move on, then hopefully they trust me enough to come to me and we can have that conversation. And, it puts the company in a better position, right? Because then I know several weeks earlier that this individual is thinking about leaving, right? And then I can start looking. And
Right.
also, too, the employee is able to finish up any projects and also have a smooth transition and understand there's no hard feelings here. It's just, unfortunately, we've reached a, I guess like a rock or something in the road. Yeah.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because that's always kind of the attitude I've had as well. When I always tell employees during reviews, if you decide this is not the right place for you, that's okay.
See,
Let
that's
me
really
know.
good. Yeah.
Let me
Right.
know. I'll give you time to interview whatever you need to do, but it's better for both of us if we understand what's next instead of blindsiding the other person. I'm not going to just
Exactly.
fire I'm not going to just fire you, and I would appreciate it if you didn't walk into my office and quit because
Right.
that's just difficult on both sides.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, um, okay, let's see. All right, so now we need to talk about UCM Digital because they're kind enough to share you with me for a half hour or so, and I'd love to hear a little bit about the company, what attracted you to it, and what they do.
Hey, UCM is a telehealth provider. We provide 24/7 patient care. And that really comes down to in terms of providing treatment as well as care coordination. I would say that we actually combine like technical abilities with clinical expertise as well as compassion. And yeah, it's just we are changing healthcare. The reason why, again, that I wanted to join was the mission, the individuals that I would have been able to work with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, our dear friend Esther popped out and said, "Right people in the right seats works for everyone." So I couldn't agree with
Right,
her
Esther?
more.
Yeah.
Yes, I love Esther. She was kind enough to connect the two of us. Okay,
She
all
was.
right.
Thank you, Esther.
Yes. Um, y you probably knew you weren't gonna get out of this interview without me asking you a question about the time you spent working at the Clinton Foundation. You
Right.
spent quite a bit of time there. I'm interested to know what it was like to work for that type of an organization. And then, of course, inquiring minds really wanna know, did you actually ever meet Hillary or Bill Clinton?
Yeah. So again, it was just nice working for a company whose main focus was to make the world a better place, like it's simply put, right? In terms of that, I worked with a lot of folks that had come over from the Peace Corps, which I had served in. And yeah, it was such an amazing time in my life. And I did get the chance to meet President Clinton and Secretary Clinton on numerous occasions, as well as Chelsea Clinton. Definitely highlight. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of amazing times in your life, I believe you mentioned at the top of this that you are a new mom. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I became a mom in September of last year. It's just, oh my gosh, it's amazing in terms of how it changes you. Yeah, I mean, I can go on and on and on about it, but it's just, he's learning, well, he's essentially like pulling himself up and starting to take steps. And it's just, my God, it's amazing.
It is. There's nothing like it. Well, congratulations. It's just such a special time, and
Thank you.
I hope you're able to spend as much time with that little guy as you possibly can. So,
Oh, yeah.
that's wonderful. Okay, so see, you survived. It wasn't too painful. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved working with Nakeishia. So someone else popped in and said you're a
Thank
great
you.
person to work with. Okay, so
Thank you.
I ask all of my guests similar questions. The first question is a given, and I read that you like cooking, so I'm expecting a good answer on this one. But what is your absolute favorite food in the world, and can you cook it?
So I wouldn't say that I have a favorite food because I'm a foodie. I love everything. But in terms of things that I do like to cook, it's a Bosnian dish. It's called borek. My father-in-law actually said that I make the best bar none. So I'm pretty happy with that compliment.
So I have not heard of that. What is it specifically?
So essentially, it's dough, and then you can layer it with cheese or potato or meat. It's a Bosnian dish. Oh my God, this is so good. It goes in the oven.
Mm,
Delicious. I'll have to make you
so,
some. If you ever meet. Yeah.
sounds amazing. I am a foodie as well. Trust me. Okay, so I'm going to get this out before I start. I have another little coughing fit. What is the one character trait you most admire in other people, and why?
Integrity. I would say that. And honestly, it comes down to there's too few people in the world that actually possess that trait.
Very true. Okay,
Mhm.
so then I get to flip the mirror on you, and I get to say, what's the character trait that you possess that you're most proud of, and why?
Empathy. I'm a very highly empathetic person by nature. It's definitely determined the course of my life. Um, and it's just, I mean, again, I kind of go back if more people were able to place themselves in others' shoes, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems in the world. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. If you can encourage employers to do just one thing to improve their company culture, what would it be?
just one, only one.
Just one. You can give me as
Yeah,
many as you want,
yeah,
if you had to pick one,
yeah.
what would it
Narrow
be?
down. It's super easy, but it's very hard. Listen to your employees. I cannot stress that enough. They are the ones that are on the front lines. They know what's going on, and they're willing to talk. But you have to be open to listen to them. You have to create a culture in which they feel comfortable speaking.
I appreciate that. Okay, this is a fun one. So, what is your secret talent or something people would be surprised to learn about you?
So no secret talent here. I wish, but definitely me serving in the Peace Corps, which I know that I mentioned here. But most folks, when I bring that up, are super surprised when they get to know me. It's like, you live without running water or electricity. It's like, yes, yes, I did.
Where specifically did you serve?
So Burkina Faso, have you heard of it? It's north of Ghana. It's a really small country. Most people
I
have
know where
not
Ghana
heard of
is,
it.
so we'll go with that.
It's
Near
literally,
Ghana.
yeah, it's right above it. Yeah. No one has ever heard of it usually, but
Okay,
yeah.
you could put me right in that bucket as well. Okay, so last question. Who is the one person, famous or otherwise, that you would most like to sit down, have a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, whatever the case may be, and just have a conversation with?
Michelle Obama. And I'll tell you why. I mean, she's just faced so many challenges in her life based on her gender and race, and she's been able to overcome all of that. She's such a resilient human being. I would love to sit down and find out, how she was able, to kind of put like not even, I guess, take into consideration what the naysayers, you know, were
Yeah.
saying about her. Yeah.
I had a really unique experience. Oh gosh, it's pre-COVID. I mean, that's kind of the delineation of everybody's lives.
Yeah, yeah.
I was at an event and I met the woman who was Michelle Obama's personal photographer. She actually published a book. I think it was called Chasing Michelle. I have it at home. And so she spent like 6 years essentially following her around and taking pictures and, documenting her life. And she just gushed about what an amazing person she was and how much she had accomplished. And it was really, really cool to learn a little bit, to hear from somebody that was very close to her about that experience. So I think you
So
had
are
a
you
good.
telling me you may have a way for me to
I
be
may
there?
have an in. I may have an in.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I may have an in for you, but
Yeah.
I think you made a very good pick. So.
Yeah.
So for anybody that I didn't mention this because I wanted to wait till the end. So this was Nakeisha's first time being on a podcast, and she told me she was very nervous at the beginning, but she was amazing, great guest, a
you.
lot of fabulous insights into the world of HR. So I'd like to thank you very much for coming on,
Thank you
and
for having me.
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today. And I will be here again next week, same bat time, same bat channel. So have a great day.
Bye, everyone.